Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. What's your excuse? I pity you. The massive Geosin postulated, the purple tattoo of a pair of shackles on their wrist cracking with power as they snatched a wounded man from the ground. The sharp claws of a war gauntlet dug into the young man's throat as they weakly tried to bat their attacker away with broken arms. The Gagosian laughed and tightened their grip, the young soldier's lifeblood spilling out over the cruel gauntlet as the massive lizard continued to speak. No scales or claws to defend yourself with, no chitin to absorb blows, only weak sacks of flesh and bone festooned in the cheapest armor an empire can buy, destined to die for gods that have never cared. The Gagosian tossed the limp body to the ground with a deep laugh, stomping on the head of a fallen man who'd been weakly reaching for his dropped sidearm. You lie alone in your foxholes, waiting for your brief, pathetic lives to end. The Genian gazed at the burning evacuation outpost, corpses in green-mottled camo littering the ground. A deep, rumbling laugh escaped their throat as they kneeled beside a human in officer's garb, roughly panting as they held a tourniquet around the stump of their leg. I, as a chosen of the divine, enjoy all the universe has to offer. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll feel nothing as my claws tear out your soft throats, and as I watch the light fade from your eyes, I shall spare a moment to think of your kind. The Gagosian gauntlet slammed down, crushing the officer's throat with brutal efficiency, and as they choked and gasped for breath, they laughed. And I shall only laugh. The spark faded from the officer's eyes, and the Genian chosen chuckled mirthfully, turning their eyes up to gaze at the small streak of condensation that was a refugee evacuation. They watched as a red light burned through the atmosphere towards the small ship, raising their arms to bask in the warmth such a detonation would create. But then the red light streaked past the pod, sailing off over the horizon and out of sight, as a ragged voice croaked, "You would laugh, monster, but let me remind you." The gnome raised a scaled eyebrow and turned to face the wounded human soldier who unsteadily rose to their feet. Half of their face had been burned away by divine fire, the charred flesh still smoldering as the human jerked a knife from their battle belt with a grunt, holding it up with the blade parallel to the ground in front of their scorched, bloody chestplate. They growled that within this weak sack of flesh and bone, unguided by his gods, and wept for only a nameless sacrifice, beats a heart, a human heart. Another soldier, one that the Gagosian could have sworn had been unable to move, slowly, painstakingly rose to their feet, clutching their M40 carbine. They took an unsteady stand at the side of the other. The knife-wielding human took a swaying step forward, voice a death rattle as they spoke. And within that heart, clad in disposable armor and defended by cold steel, burns the fury of every man, woman, and child from every forgotten corner of the universe. Within that heart that knows only fear, uncared for and mourned only by those whose lives they saved, stands the courage of all humankind. More wounded soldiers stood, drawing weapons or retrieving them from the ground. Some only raised their fists, their grievous injuries not even slowing them as they took their place at the speaker's side. The Goyan grinned, flexing their claws hungrily as the human began to march towards them, voice inexplicably growing stronger. Within that weak sack of flesh that you so openly mock beats the heart of a man. The knife stabbed at the Gagosian, and they simply went to bat it aside, only for the blade of the knife to power through the half-hearted slab and skitter off his breastplate. The Gagosian's eyes went wide as the shouting soldier ripped the knife back. He'd as a factory worker, the Gagosian blocked a swipe of the knife as they backpedaled to keep distance, the human pursuing. A tungsten penetrator ripped the side of his helmet open, slicing his face as the owner glared at him through the scope, calloused hands firmly holding the rifle even as their guts hung from a tear in their stomach. He is a scholar. The Gagosian barely registered the bent rifle before it connected with the exposed portion of his face, its wielder a small human with thick lens glasses. The chosen slapped the mousy man to the side with a roar of anger, only for it to turn into a roar of pain as the shouting soldier's knife found a gap in his armor. A brutal slash of the war gauntlet silenced their speech. He is a farmer. The shout was followed by the sharp blade of a bayonet piercing into the Gagosian's stomach through another gap in their armor. The soldier, an older man with sun-tanned skin and hardened hands, met their end at the brutal blow of an armored elbow. He's a father. A young dark-haired man with bright blue eyes screamed as they drove their fist into the chin of the Chosen's helmet, snapping the video cable and plunging it into darkness. Their throat was split open by a wild, blind slash of a war gauntlet. "He is a brother." A tungsten slug pierced the Chosen's chest plate, lodging in their spinal cord and sending them slamming into the dirt as their legs refused to support them. The Goyan looked up in shocked bewilderment as the corpse-like soldiers slowly encircled them, one eventually straddling him and pressing a pistol into their face through the hole. They panted, holding the Chosen up as the power of the fickle god they served dried up, leaving them weak and exhausted. "He is a mere man, and against forces like you, plotting and lecherous, powered by the will of thirsting gods and fueled by unending greed. He has held the line with weapons only powerful in numbers and no help from the gods. He has made you pay for every mile and oceans of your own blood. So I say to you," the human pulled the hammer of the pistol back slowly, hands shaking as they growled, "what's your excuse, monster?" The Forsaken could only whimper in response before the human pulled the trigger with a look of hatred burning in their eyes.